Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm Richard, this is Lap of the World, and today we are continuing to document my first DIY attempt at the major service on my 1992 Acura NSX back here. At 289,000 miles, give or take, it was due for a timing belt and water pump, and that is what we have been doing. In part one, we got as far, which I will link up here in the corner by the way, in part one, we got as far as removing the alternator and stopped just short of starting the valve covers because I've never had the valve covers off this car myself before. So that is where we are starting today. Let's jump right in. All of the fasteners on the valve covers have a very mild torque spec of around 7 foot-pounds. So none of them should be difficult to remove, but you do want to be careful not to drop any of them. It's worth noting that although I've removed the coil packs, I have deliberately left the spark plugs in at this point, just in case of that eventuality. I don't want to have to be magnet fishing in a cylinder for some small cap nut that I fumbled. So now having the easier of the two valve covers to remove off the car, this is the front valve cover, I've got a couple of observations with the removal process. So there are the 6 fasteners that you'll know about that it will show these in the shop manual. 2 of them are kind of sneaky because they're on the long threads that come out of here. And on the top of those threads, you will have already taken off a couple of cap nuts that hold the coil covers on. But at the bottom of those threaded rods are 2 more 10mm fasteners that you'll need a deep well socket to get to. Also, mine took a little bit of encouragement. You know, you can pry on it a little bit, but be very careful not to score the mating surface because that'll inevitably lead to a leak. But they do call, when you put these gaskets back on, or the gasket that goes around this groove here, the manual specifies to put it on with a little light coat of Honda Bond. You can see some kind of leftover portions thereof here. I'll get that all cleaned out obviously before I put it back together. But the place where these will leak, that's another thing I'll mention in a second. The place where these will typically leak is going to be this back corner here. I guess that would be in a US spec car. That's the driver's side bottom corner. So that's kind of where you want to look for. Mine was definitely having a little bit of seepage down there, so it was probably about that time. One other note, you want to be very careful keeping this valve cover upright when you pull it off, because you do have, these little seals and washers. There are 6 of them. There's one for each fastener. And if you're not careful with those, there's a potential they could fall down the spark plug thing and you'd have to fish them out with a magnet or some other little tool because they could fall into the top of the engine from there. But so keep track of all those. Again, there should be 6 of them. I have all 6. I can see all 6 here, so I'm good. Now on to the back cover. So with the second valve cover successfully removed, I believe I can say at this point that that wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. The rear bank is a little more tricky just because you've got to get access to stuff. But if you understand the trick of that you have to rotate this thing 90 degrees to get it out of the car, rather than trying to fumble it and pull it straight out like you can with a front bank, if you know that, then it's not too bad. Now, I don't know if you did hear, but as I had kind of cautioned about these little washers and seals, I did lose one. I heard it, fortunately, I heard it hit the exhaust on its way down, so I knew it wasn't in the engine. And so I was able to just pick it off the floor. But that's what I mean, especially with this rear bank that you're having to kind of manipulate a little bit more. These things can and will make bids for freedom, and you just want to make sure that you have them all accounted for, both the metal part and the rubber part, to make sure you didn't have any. You don't need to go fishing down in the valve train for anything, because that would suck. Now with this bank, these it left behind the coil or the plug well seals here, whereas on the front bank they came off with the cover. So again, you do want to make sure to keep account of all of the seals and gaskets as well, because you don't want to end up accidentally double gasketing something when you go back on that could lead to leaks or worse. Now, as you can tell, I'm sure that the detailers and OCD car collectors among you are completely aghast at the condition of my valve covers, especially this rear bank. Now, I do think, with respect to this rear bank, as more stuff flakes off with just me touching it, I am going to probably go ahead and try, while I have the car kind of apart and down, I may attempt to engineer some kind of supplemental heat shielding to do a little better job of protecting this from the heat thrown off by the aftermarket headers that I have on the car. Because I think that's probably what has led to some of this, is this rear bank gets cooked a little bit more thoroughly than the front bank, which sits more on top of the engine given the way that it's canted a little bit in the car. But I will be taking care of this while I have them off. There is a little bit of a turnaround time, but I have a local guy that I really trust to do this kind of work. He was the guy who powered John with 10 Fab, because he is the guy who powder coated the wheels for my Gallardo, which are incidentally also magnesium like these valve covers. So I know that he can do that and do it well. So my knee jerk is to just go back with the traditional crinkle black finish, but if you have a different opinion on how I should redo the valve covers, the only other sort of half thought I had was kind of a gold bronze to match the wheels or something like that. I don't know, maybe something it could be something special given that the car is about to hit 300,000 miles. But yeah, so again, I'm probably going to go back with the crinkle black. But if you have other ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments. Maybe I'll throw a poll up on YouTube just to see if there's a strong opinion one way or the other. But anyhow, valve covers off, check. Moving on to the next set of instructions. So I'm not sure how well this is going to show up on camera, but there's a slight difference in coloration with the kind of the I don't know what you call that, the upper cam cap assemblies there. So this one on this side, on the front bank, it's a little more golden brown, where on the rear bank it is just kind of a light gold color. And I don't know if that means anything. I will go and research that once I put the camera down, but if you guys want to chime in and let me know if that's anything I should be concerned about, then please do. I'll be kind of inspecting the valve train as I go. I may go ahead and tackle a valve adjustment. It's kind of one of those things that I don't feel that the car necessarily needed it. But, I've gotten this far. It seemed silly to have to get this far again in a few months if I realized that I was being a little optimistic with my assessment. So I think I need to order a tool to do that. But if there's going to be a turnaround time on getting the valve covers tidied back up, then it may be a good time to deal with that as well. But anyway, moving on now. So this is the part where I apologize for bouncing around the page a little bit rather than sticking to the numeric order of operations listed in the manual. We've already, as I noted at the beginning of the video, we've already skipped the part where we were supposed to remove the engine mount and the transmission mount. There's a reason for that. We'll get to it. We skip down here to removing the valve covers. Now we're going to skip again a couple of steps and come up here and remove the alternator bracket stiffener because it's easy to get to, kind of low-hanging fruit. Then we're going to jump back down here to number 18. We're going to get everything lined up at number 1 top dead center. Then we're going to skip over to 23-ish. We're not going to completely remove the crankshaft pulley here, but we are going to get the nut, or the bolt rather, broken loose. That is a non-trivial activity if you've ever attempted it on almost any car. So I want to do that before I undo all these engine and transmission mounts, so I'm tackling this while everything is most rigidly mounted. Once we get done with that, that's probably where we're going to pause for this video, because then I'm going to have to take a minute to fabricate something before we can move on to steps 15, 16, and 19. If that makes any sense, I apologize. One thing in full disclosure, I am also following kind of a supplemental walkthrough that I found kind of since the last video, honestly, on the NSX Prime FAQ. I believe this was co-authored, if you are familiar with the NSX community and some of the OG members and wrenches in the community, Larry B, Dano, and was compiled by some guy named Gary. So appreciation to all of those for compiling this. It's been kind of very helpful and gave a little additional insight. I think really, you know, not to discourage you from watching my videos, but I think if you have the shop manual and this document, and you kind of generally understand how things work and how to work on cars, this would get you most of the way there as long as you have the tools to do so. But with that said, let's move on back over here and let's jump on that alternator bracket and we'll move forward from there. While I'm in this area, I'm also going to loosen off the tension and remove the air conditioning belt. All right, guys and gals, special tool alert, and stop looking at me like that. To remove the crank pulley, you're going to need one of these at the very least. These technically come in a two-part kit along with another, like a rod with a handle on the end, and this is to hold the crank pulley in place while you remove the bolt. I just have this section of it and a steel jack handle that has gotten the job done before, so I'm confident we'll do so again. But I will leave this part number and or a link to where you can order one in the description if there's a cheaper option than getting one from Acura. So here is the general setup. You have the tool in question socketed into the crank pulley, then the other end of the tool in question in the jack handle. The jack handle extending down to the floor, on which I've put some wood, mainly just to protect the floor coating, such as what's left of it. And of course, the other thing you're going to need is a BFW. Evolving our setup a little further, we have the special tool socketed in the crank pulley. That is braced via this jack handle on the ground through some wood. Now we have a jack stand set up here, and that is what we're going to use to brace our BFW as we begin applying torque. These are standard righty-tighty, lefty-loosey bolts, so nothing crazy there. The only thing you will want in addition to your BFW is a long and thick enough extension. So with all of that in place, we'll lean on it a little bit and hopefully not have a repeat of our axle nut episode. Well, with the crank pulley bolt having come off with mercifully little drama, I think that is probably where we are going to call it for this episode. In the next episode, the next couple of episodes, though, will probably be where we really get into the meat and potatoes of this job. This is where we're going to actually get into manipulating the engine, removing the timing covers, getting at the belt itself, and starting that actual kind of precision work. So, stick around for those. Again, if you're not subscribed and you've enjoyed this series, please consider clicking the button down there as well as the bell. That way you won't miss the next episode when it goes up live. With the eventual goal, of course, of having the NSX back on the road and back on a track potentially near you soon, trademark. But with that said, next couple of episodes we'll be continuing this job. We'll be getting into the detailed work. After that, we'll kind of see. I expect that I'll probably have some wait time to get the valve covers back, so maybe I'll throw a valve adjustment in there for giggles or something. So anyway, again, if you don't want to miss that, click subscribe, drop a like if you enjoyed this, leave me a comment with your opinions on what I should do with the valve covers, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. I'm Richard. This is Lap of the World, and I will see you in the next video, if not at the track.